Welcome and thank you for attending our 5th annual Innovation in Education Breakfast. My name is Stephanie Gangopoulos, and I'm the chair of the Sioux Falls Public Schools Education Foundation Board. I know that all of you in this room share our passion for education, whether you're a donor, a business leader, a parent, an educator, a grandparent, or a public policy maker. Thank you so much for coming today to learn more about our programs and the grants that we offer. It's been an exciting year for the Education Foundation, and I'm pleased to share some of our milestones with you. I also want to thank our sponsors today, which are First Premier, SDN Communications, and the First National Bank in Sioux Falls. We have several teachers that are wearing stickers that say, "Ask me about my grant." They're also around the perimeter of the room, so be sure to stop by and visit with them. In the meantime, while you're enjoying your breakfast, please go back, help yourself to some breakfast, and we will start our formal program in about 10 minutes. This morning, we are going to hear from a couple of our grant recipients about how they plan to use their funds to enhance education in their classrooms. We'll also hear from Superintendent Dr. Brian Maher, who's been a great supporter of the Education Foundation, and he'll talk about his strategic plans for the school district. And then Vernon Brown and John Paulson will explain how you can get more involved in supporting the Education Foundation. But first, I would like to tell you a little bit more about our programs and where we're going. The Education Foundation had an extremely busy year this past year. Right after the breakfast, we got together and went through a comprehensive strategic planning session. And we set a vision for where we wanted to be in the year 2035, and then we worked backwards. What do we need to accomplish in the next 3 years in order to achieve that 2035 vision? And then what do we need to accomplish in 2018 to get us on track? And through this strategic planning process, we clarified who we are as an organization and made slight modification to our mission statement. So our mission statement now reads, "We champion teachers and students by encouraging, promoting, and funding creative and innovative teaching strategies in order to enhance and enrich education in all Sioux Falls public schools." The foundation achieves our mission by sponsoring 2 grant programs, the First Year Teachers and our Innovation in Education. The First Year Teacher Grants, just as the name implies, supports first-time first-year teachers who have no classroom experience. First-time teachers often purchase classroom supplies and materials out of their own pocket, and these costs are substantial. Many first-year teachers estimate that they spend about $1,000 out of their own pocket to get their classrooms ready for their first year. And while these startup costs are necessary for the teaching and learning environment, they are not typically included in school budgets. With the assistance of a grant from the Mary Chilton DAR Foundation, we were able to double the amount of our first-year teacher grants last year and provided $200 to each new teacher in the Sioux Falls School District with no previous teaching experience for their classroom supplies and materials. In 2017, there were 75 new teachers, and grants totaled $15,000. I'm happy to announce today that DAR awarded us another grant, and so we will be able to maintain our first-year teacher grants at $200 again this year. Next week, we'll be presenting about 70 of these checks at new teacher orientation. By 2035, our goal is to grow the first-year teacher grant program, so we are providing $500 to every teacher with no previous classroom experience. We also have our Innovation in Education grant program that we've sponsored since 2008, so this is our 10th year of that program. And the goal of the Innovation in Education grant program is to help teachers apply advanced technology or innovative curriculum additions to their own lesson plans. Since 2008, we've made 283 grant awards to teachers, totaling more than $358,000. The grant proceeds are used to purchase school materials, for innovative programs. And often these materials are used year after year so that the number of students it touches just continues to multiply. The grant process is a competitive process. The names are removed from the grant applications before they're evaluated by our grants committee, which is made up of former administrators or former educators and community leaders. The grants committee then uses a rubric to score the grants, and it's quite an honor to be awarded a grant by the committee. Last year, we had a record number of applicants, which was great, but we were only able to fund less than 25% of the grant applications we received. This morning, we have two groups of grant recipients here to highlight grants they were awarded last spring. They're going to explain how they plan to implement their new programs in the classroom with the funds they received. At this time, I would like to invite Melissa Hittner and Mary Gail Monahan from New Tech High and Sarah Stokey from CTE to come to the podium to visit about their grants.
All right, good morning. Welcome to BioLit at New Technology High School here in Sioux Falls, where high school biology and English curriculum are integrated into an exciting course of discovery and exploration. Meaningful, authentic group projects challenge students to build collaboration, communication, and presentation skills, also while building biology and sophomore level English content knowledge. Where the study of body systems meets Mary Shelley's Frankenstein in graphic novel form in an early project we call Frankenstein's Monster. Students create a video tutorial on how to install their body system into the class monster. And where the study of genetics and cell biology are woven within the readings of The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks by Rebecca Skloot. The HeLa project culminates with argumentative research essays and Lincoln Douglas-style debates on topics of bioethics issues. The Keys to the Zoo is another popular project where the principles of ecology and human effects merge with Ray Bradbury's classic short story, A Sound of Thunder, and nonfiction excerpts from Beyond Words by Carl Safina. And lastly, Mission Green Thumbs, where cellular respiration and photosynthesis are literally put to the test in our classroom and in the novel The Martian by Andy Weir. The grant that we're celebrating today impacts this project, Mission Green Thumbs. Students culminate this project with the completion of a formal biology lab report and a Martian garden design. Thank you. Sorry. And your generous grant donation of over $2,500 will allow our students to conduct their own growing experiments of their own design through the use of a brand new Grow Lab, and also give them unlimited access to the classroom edition version of The Martian by Andy Weir. Additional materials purchased for this project include fertilizer, soil, seeds, along with blank journals for students to explore, make observations, record their data throughout the growing period.
If you'd like, I can walk you through a little bit more of what the project will look like. We're going to start with a clip from The Martian. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with it, but in one scene, he is attempting to, not just one scene, many scenes, he's attempting to grow potatoes on Mars, and that is kind of the setting place for the students' project. Students are divided into mission teams of 6 different students. They are sort of militarized student roles, and we call ourselves General Hittner and Admiral Monahan to make it a little bit more authentic. And then partner pairs within those groups of 6 design experiments to test what would have the biggest impact on plant growth on Mars. Some past ones have been the effect of light intensity on potato leaf color, the effect of excessive iron on the health of Wisconsin fast plants. Students can pick whatever they would like to test based on their research of what the Mars environment is like and things that they'll be able to control in their habitat on Mars. While we wait for their experiments to grow, students are going to be reading The Martian. They learn a little bit about basic botany, and then, as Mary Gail said, they are completing video logs and written logs similar to how he does in the book and the movie. Our biggest community partner is Southeast Technical Institute's Horticulture Department. Students will actually go on a tour of their greenhouse before they design their experiments to get ideas on how you can control plant growth. And then their class will actually come and visit our class and give our students feedback. So it's a really great partnership between that horticulture class and them using their content knowledge and our biolit class. At the end, after their experiments are completed, students will write a lab report detailing what they've found. They will take that back to their mission teams of 6, and the team of 6 will then present a mission to General Hittner and Admiral Monahan, and then we select a mission to go to Mars and continue the experiment. We just wanted to thank the Education Foundation and all the donors so much for making this a possibility. You're making all these projects so much more engaging and authentic for our students, so thank you.
Hi guys, my name is Sarah Stocky. I taught health careers at CTE Academy here in Sioux Falls. I don't know if all of you guys know where CTE Academy is, but I'm a nurse by trade, and so I teach my students basically pre-nursing, going into healthcare. Is this really what they want to do? And your grant has allowed these students to do so much more in our classrooms. I got one of the biggest grants I think that has ever been given out, which is phenomenal. I went for gusto with this one, but I got simulation mannequins, and I didn't just get one, I got 2 simulation mannequins, which allows all 3 of our classrooms now to have a simulation mannequin that we can use every day in our classroom, which is phenomenal. It's a picture of our new mannequin. They got here in the end of April. And this one is the one that is in my classroom. As you can see, it looks just like a dummy, right? But he's got a cute iPad next to him, and that iPad allows me to make him do anything I want to. So I can give him asthma, I can give him a heart attack. And my students not only can hear it, they can put their stethoscopes up to his chest and hear what that's gonna sound like, they can feel his pulse, and his pulse will change, or it will stop completely, and then I make them go, what are you gonna do next? And they have to critically think, and they work as a team, and they collaborate, and they process things. And the greatest thing about a simulation mannequin is if they kill it, I just have to hit reboot, and it comes back, which is phenomenal and very, very safe. And for high school students, that's what we want, right? We want safe. But this thing allows me, you can see he has a blood pressure cuff on his arm, they can check blood pressures. And you know, we practice blood pressures in the classroom on each other, but if you've noticed, high school students are usually pretty healthy, and so all their blood pressures are very similar. So they've never known that there could be a blood pressure of 280 over 120. And so I can make him have that, or I can make him have a really low blood pressure, which is something that they have to learn how to do when they go to the nursing home. My students spend an entire year in my classroom. So the beginning of the year, we're learning about the basics. We're learning about anatomy, physiology, how the body works, the diseases. They're learning CNA skills. So they learn how to make beds. Yes, I teach high school students how to make beds. That's the hardest thing at the beginning of the year. And wash their hands. Those are some of the biggest things I teach them. But when we talk about asthma, or I'm talking about the heart, and they're like, what does that sound like? Let's go back to the mannequin. Let's go listen to it. Let's go feel it. What is it doing? And this mannequin allows for that to happen. Before we had 1 mannequin out at CTE, and we have 3 classrooms. For this fall, I think we have about 200 students signed up for our program. And to lug that room to room to room it's hard. Not only that, but if a teacher goes, I want to use the mannequin today, and it's already in somebody else's room, you can't just go steal it. That's not very nice to the other teacher. And so now we have 1 in each of our rooms, and we can power them on in the morning. And so if the students are like, what does that look like? What is it? Let's go back. Let's go listen to it. The cool thing about this mannequin is when we do CPR, he actually has lungs, or she. We can make it whichever one we want to. But when you actually bag it, it lifts the chest, which most of you guys, if you've ever practiced CPR on those little mannequins, they don't quite do that. The other cool thing is the computer reacts to what we do to the patient. So if I'm bagging it, all of a sudden the oxygen levels will go up on the computer, which it shows them the student is doing a good job, and it rewards them basically for doing that. It also gives me a headset, so if I wanted to hide behind a wall and make them have to have a conversation with this mannequin, because patients are real, right? You can't just walk in, do your stuff, and walk out. You have to talk to people. And in the world of high schoolers, they don't really communicate that well. They can't LOL to a patient. Doesn't work like that. And so I can hide, and then they have to learn how to have a conversation with me, which is awesome as well. Whoa, I'll keep going. Sorry, I get kind of excited about this because this is awesome. So who's benefited? We have over 200 students each year. This summer, like I said, ours came in April, so my students at the end of last year were able to play with them, and we were able to figure out what they were capable of. I'm actually able to put stuff in their stomach and put an NG down their nose, and we're able to suction it out. I know some of you guys are eating breakfast. To me, that's nursing talk. I don't get grossed out by anything. And then we're able to put tubes in them and IVs and draw blood, all of those things out of this mannequin, which is phenomenal. So we have the 200 students that just come to class, but then this summer I held a healthcare camp where I had middle schoolers and ninth graders from Sioux Falls. I had a student from Pierre come to my healthcare camp. And we were able to interact with our mannequins, which was awesome, and I was able to make them critically think. And they can do that at middle school. That is awesome, that they were able to put all the things that I had taught them together and use it on my mannequin. The other really cool thing about this project is when I saw the amount for the grant, I was like, oh, the grant, I can get mannequins for our rooms. And then I saw the highest amount was $10,000. So I don't know if you guys know how much a mannequin that is electronic costs, but they are really expensive. The ones that are at USD, SDSU, those at the hospitals here in town are like $100,000. And I was like, yeah, there's no grant that's gonna cover that for a high school. And so I went out there and I researched and I found Laerdal, which is where we ended up getting our mannequins from. And I called them and I said, so I see your mannequin is $10,000 for one. I have a grant that I'm going to apply for, but it's only $10,000. That's the most I can get. And here's the deal. I want it for 2 classrooms, not for 1. So I need 2 mannequins. And I used my power of barter, which I didn't know I had. And I begged. And they said, we'll give you a 2-for-1 deal, meaning you will get not only 2 mannequins, you will get 2 computer systems to run those mannequins for under $10,000. And so I was able to secure that so that not only my classroom, our other teacher as well, was able to get a simulation mannequin out of this, which is phenomenal because one of our other teachers, she teaches health careers in the first semester, but second semester she teaches EMT. So the mannequin can be used year-round in more ways than one, and touches even more students that way, which is phenomenal. It's hands-on. What better way to learn, right? Apply. Practice your skills. Nobody wants a nurse that only is book smart. Nobody wants a doctor that doesn't know where your liver is. That would not be good. And so they're able to apply that every day. It is high tech, but it's not super high tech, so it's super easy for us to run. With that iPad, I'm able to control everything, and it's so fast, it's so easy. It's a safe environment. Our students are in my classroom where they already feel safe. They've worked with me, and they spend almost 2 hours a day with me. They work with me every day, and if they make a mistake, they can ask a question. The patient's not going to be like, you don't know what you're doing? The patient's not going to ask them anything. And they're able to learn in that safe environment. They get to do patient care skills. The mannequins are movable just like a human, so when we do range of motion, they're able to move all of the joints. They move just like a human's. They're able to practice pulses. They're able to do blood pressures. They practice bed baths. They practice making a bed around a patient. All skills, and they're able to do that around this mannequin as well. The other cool thing is he has a bladder, or she has a bladder, so I can put a Foley catheter in. That's kind of an awkward thing. If any of you guys have ever had a Foley catheter, high schoolers don't really know what to do with that or how to take care of it. I can put that in that mannequin, and we're in a safe environment, and when they walk in the room, I go, oh, the patient's not gonna get offended. Patient's just gonna hang out there. And so they get to get over that initial fear right away. It's getting them ready for the workplace. As I said before, Sanford, Avera, the VA, all of them have simulator mannequins that they need to know how to work around, and this is getting them that first step in the door before they head to those workplaces. Of my students last year, or of all of our students, I think we're at like 83, I think, for the CNA, have passed the CNA test. So they're all working right now at jobs, at the hospitals, at nursing homes. And so having that experience in our classroom already is going to put them ahead of the game out in the field. Secondary institutions, doesn't matter if they go to Southeast Tech for nursing or Surge Tech, or they go to USD for nursing or SDSU for pharmacy, they have this experience of working with simulator mannequins because they'll use them there as well. The soft skills, communication. They learn how to communicate what they need, but they also learn how to communicate with the patient. Critical thinking, like I said, I will make that mannequin be very, very sick, and I'll go, well, what's your tool? And then they bring out their blood pressure cuff, and they bring out their fingers, and they bring out their stethoscope, and I go, well, assess your patient, figure out what's wrong. And they have to work together, and it's so fun to see their little light bulbs go off, and they're like, yes, that's what you were talking about. Yes, you've learned it. Awesome. Collaboration. You get to see them work as a team. Nothing works in healthcare if you don't work as a team. You cannot cure anybody by yourself. And so that is something that is so important for especially high schoolers to learn, that you have to work as a team. When I give them their projects at the beginning of the year and I'm like, okay, you need to do a presentation together. I don't like group work. Guess what our life is? Group work. And so now they have to collaborate, and at the end we'll be like, how did collaboration go? Who are your natural leaders? Who are some people who need some work on their skills? And they're able to lead within their own team, which is awesome. Real world application, I'm able to give them real diseases. Like I talked about, we practice CPR every 2 years. We all get CPR certified. But how many of you guys have actually used CPR on somebody? These guys, I'm able to flatline my patient, basically, and they have to go, oh, this is where I would do CPR here. Well, do it. What are you waiting for? Get your hands on there. And it will actually register that you're doing CPR and if you're doing it effectively. It allows them to reflect at the end, where you have a safe environment, so we're able to talk about, what did you learn? What went well? What didn't go so well? Where do you need improvement? Where does your team need improvement? It motivates them to learn, because they know that they only get to use the mannequin if they learn the content in class. It's engaging. Everybody is always hands-on. This picture is from my summer camp this summer, and you see how many hands can fit around these mannequins. It takes up the full bed, and so everybody is able to get a stethoscope in there and listen. And I'm able to turn the volume way up so that if somebody can't get their stethoscope all the way up to the heart, they can still hear the heart sounds, which is awesome. So I'm able to get my whole classroom around there. And it allows them to prioritize. What's the most important part of your patient? What do you need to deal with right now? Is it the fact that they have no pulse, or is it the fact that there's water on what's the most important part of this, taking care of this patient? So they're able to prioritize. The other really cool thing about this project was we ended up at the end of the year having a little bit extra in Perkins, and because we had the computerized system and we had these 2 amazing adult mannequins, we were able to get 2 peds mannequins as well, because they hooks up to the same computer system. And so now in our classrooms we have babies and we have adults, and they hook up to the exact same system. So these are the kids playing listening to the heart sounds. I gave the baby a murmur. How many people actually have a murmur and they're able to hear what a murmur looks like? Sounds like, and so they were able to hear what that sounds like, and that was pretty cool. So they get to learn their patient skills. They get to practice all their CNA stuff. They apply everything I teach them from first semester all the way through to the end. We use this all year long. And MedTerm. MedTerm is the language of healthcare, and I don't talk to them in basic terms. Once we start learning that in MedTerm, I talk in MedTerm. And so when I say something we're back by the mannequin, I go, what does that mean? And they have to sit there and break it down, figure out what's wrong with the person. It's just awesome to see them light up. It's awesome to see their little light bulbs go up over their head, and they're like, yes, I got it. I figured this out. It's just phenomenal. And because of this grant, first off, thank you so much. You guys have no idea how big this is. This is phenomenal. These kids, this summer, even doing the summer camp, these kids are like, that thing breathes? It does. And they're able to put their hands, and I go, feel right here. And they're going, okay, what's that? And all of a sudden it starts beating, and they're able to feel the pulse. They just light up, and they're able to learn, and they were so engaged. The top 2 pictures, that's from my summer camp. The one is the morning group, the one is the afternoon group. I took 5th and 6th graders in the morning, and 7th, or 5th, 6th, and 7th in the morning, and then 8th and 9th in the afternoon. And so we had 40 43, 44 kids that came out this summer and learned all about healthcare, and we were able to do a lot with the simulated mannequins. And the moments at the bottom, those are going to happen this next year. We're going to be able to do CPR. They can actually tube. We can put an ET tube down their throat and make them breathe with that, and they have to learn how to take care of that. Second semester, our students do internships. They spend 5 weeks at the hospital, 5 weeks at the nursing home with real patients, and this gives them that access before they head out there so they know exactly what they're getting into. So thank you so much for everything. This is so very much appreciated.
Thank you so much, Mary Gail and Sarah and Melissa, for sharing your stories with us. The Martian Garden project the grant was sponsored by DAR, and the Mannequin grant was sponsored by Sanford Health. So thank you to those sponsors as well. On July 27th, the Education Foundation sponsored our third teacher swap meet, and this event helps teachers buy, sell, and trade school supplies. Each year, it continues to grow, and we receive lots of positive comments from teachers that attend. This year, we had over 100 tables reserved for teachers that wanted to sell their supplies, and we had about 450 teachers in attendance. I'd like to extend a big thank you to Amy Scott Stoltz, our past board chair, for organizing the event, and to Avera Health for sponsoring the swap meet. Our goal is to continue to find ways to grow our grants program each year because we have such huge needs in our district. And through our strategic planning process, we decided that we needed to triple the amount we're fundraising each year, or triple the amount we're fundraising over the next 3 years in order to better serve our students and our teachers. We also want to focus on growing our endowment by 3 to 6% annually. And by 2035, we want to be the largest K-12 education foundation in the state of South Dakota. So in order to achieve this vision, our board of volunteers recognized that we needed help. And with the support of the school board and Dr. Maher, I'm excited to announce that we hired our first executive director at the Education Foundation. Please join me in welcoming Allison Struck to the Education Foundation. Allison comes from a family of educators. In fact, her dad is with her today, and he'll be starting his 40th year in the Yankton School District this fall. Allison's brought a lot of energy and ideas to the Education Foundation. She recently managed the backpack program at Feeding South Dakota. And although Allison just started her position on July 16th, I know she's already started to reach out to some of you in the room and meet with you. And so we're just thrilled to have her on board to help us raise awareness and better tell our story. This is my last year as chair of, thanks. We'll skip ahead. As chair of the Education Foundation Board, I'm so proud of what we've accomplished, and I'd like to recognize our board members who are listed on the screen for their vision and their guidance and their hard work, particularly this past year. This is one of the most dedicated and engaged boards that I've ever had the pleasure of working with. I'd also like to recognize Rob Swenson, who does our media, and Angie Kuiper, who is our way in the back. She's our part-time foundation coordinator. Angie actually accepted a full-time position with Downtown Rotary earlier this spring, but she was nice enough to stay on with us until we got Allison on board. And so she'll be transitioning everything over to Allison in the next couple of weeks. Would all of our board members just please stand just to be recognized, and Rob and Angie. Now I'd like to introduce you to our speaker this morning, Dr. Brian Maher, the superintendent of the Sioux Falls Public School District. He's led the school district through the development of an extensive strategic plan, and I'm sure that you've probably seen him in the media regarding some of his strategic priorities. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Maher.
Well, good morning, everybody. It is truly, this is the beginning of my fourth year, so it's the fourth time I get to address this group, and this is always kind of the kickoff. This gets us rolling, and it's as much a pleasure today to be introduced as the superintendent of the Sioux Falls School District as it was just a few years ago when Amy Scott Stoles had the opportunity to introduce me to this group. So truly a pleasure to be with you today. I want to go through, good teacher is going to let you know what we're doing today, right? So here's our plan. Here's what we've got going today. Number one, I want you to have fun. Hope you have already. I hope you continue to have fun this morning, because part of what we do is engaging and having fun. So I want to do that. I want you to learn about the bond referendum. And I want to make it clear that it isn't my point to have you vote for or have you vote against the bond issue. Rather, it is my job to help educate and make sure that your questions regarding that really important date are answered here this morning. Also, I want to give you an update on the strategic plan, where we are in terms of the strategic plan as a school system, what we've got accomplished and what we have yet to do. And then I want to celebrate the direction of the foundation. I want to give my own thoughts on some of the things Stephanie just talked about. And then I want to complete all that within 20 minutes. So I've got my timer. I'm going, and I want you to know that those of you who have heard me speak a little bit are probably going, I don't know if he can make that. And those of you who have heard me speak a lot, I know you're taking bets right now because you think you're going to make money on the overs. So I'll do my best. I've got the timer going. So here we go. Bond issue. The first question, I think, when we think about the bond issue is, why are we even talking about that? Why is that a point of conversation in our school system? And the biggest reason is enrollment growth. There are many other reasons as well, but really it's enrollment growth. If you think back one generation, in that one generation, as a school system, we've grown by nearly 9,000 students, well over 8,800 students in that time frame. And if you're a citizen of Sioux Falls, that's no surprise to you. You've seen the rooftops go up in that period of time. You still see them going up. So enrollment growth really isn't a surprise to anybody. But to maybe put that in context, if those 8,800 new students were their own school district, that school district would be the third largest school district in the state of South Dakota. That 8,800 students would only be behind Sioux Falls and Rapid City. It'd be well ahead of any other school district in terms of size. So we've grown by more than Aberdeen Central or more than Harrisburg or more than Brandon Valley in the last generation. So that's what we're attempting to accommodate. Also, the growth isn't over. Those of you who live here know and see the continued growth in our city, and of course that manifests itself in the growth in our school district. We anticipate that in the next 5 years we'll grow by about another 1,000 students. And if you look at our growth over time, we grow by about 200 to 500 students annually. So to think that we'll grow by another 1,000 students in the next 5 years really is a conservative projection. And then the other thing to look at is, where are we in terms of those building facilities today? How much room do we have to grow in our existing facilities, and what other needs do we have in those facilities? So what are the specifics? Let's talk a little bit about where we are in terms of enrollment projections. I've established that a little bit already, but also in terms of our functional capacities. How much room do we have in the buildings that we already have as a school system? And then also I want to talk to you a little bit about how we've got to where we are today. This wasn't the superintendent saying, I think maybe we should run a bond issue. This wasn't even the Board of Education saying, I think we ought to run a bond issue. Rather, it was an intentional seeking out of opinions in the community. We had students involved, and those of you who understand the power of that voice, I should never be surprised by it, but I always am surprised by, if you just ask. They've really got some incredible insight to provide. So we started with the student voice and talked to them about what should we be thinking about. We also had opportunities for our teachers to weigh in. We had 2 forums for our teachers to come and listen to the issues that we face and then provide potential solutions to the opportunities that face us as a school district. Next, we went out to the community and started talking to the community in community engagement sessions about what to talk about. And I'll address that a little bit more as we go here. There's a slide just showing where we've been over the last generation up to that vertical blue bar. That's about the 8,800 student growth that you've seen, and where we think we're going over the next 5 years, an increase of another 1,000 students. So that's just a picture of what I've already talked about. So far, so good on the time, by the way. Here's an example of enrollment. So I talk about the increase of 8,800 students in the last generation and the increase of 1,000 students in the next 5 years. What does that mean to us? It means we've got a pipeline of kids coming into our buildings. Some of those are projections, pretty solid projections, but those are projections on our growth. What about the kids who are already in our buildings? What impact will that have on our facilities? So we conducted an exercise. First of all, we did an exhaustive study, and one of the things we found over years of study is that after 1 year, our kindergartners, they tend to become first graders. Yeah, I know, who knew? And so as our kids matriculate through the school system, we know what impact we have already on our middle schools and our high schools based on those kids who are already in our school system. So when we look at our first 3 grade levels, kindergarten, first grade, and second grade, and we compare them to our middle 3 grade levels, 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade, we know that if our first 3 grades from this last school year were magically transposed to be middle schoolers in a couple of weeks here, we would have 478 more seats to find than we currently have to find. And that would be problematic for us. If we do that same exercise for our first 4 grades, kindergarten, first, second, and third grade, and compare our first 4 grade levels to our last 4 grade levels. So in other words, our earliest learners to the seats we have available in the high school, and this is last year's data now, we would be looking for 1,144 new seats for kids in our high schools. And while the middle school issue is truly problematic, this one I really don't know how we would solve in terms of the overcrowding that already exists at our high schools. So that's just a little story, a little example of what those enrollment issues mean to us as a school district. What you have on this very busy slide on the left, you have 22 horizontal bars, some of them blue, some of them green. Those 22 horizontal bars represent our elementary schools, and actually our elementary schools are named up there. We have 24 elementaries. 4 of them are co-located in 2 schools. So of those 24 elementaries, they're in 22 buildings. Of those 22 buildings, 18 of them are at or are over capacity. The red vertical line that you see there shows when a school building reaches its functional capacity. So we have 4 buildings where we have room for growth and 18 buildings where we are at or over capacity in our elementary schools. The middle portion of that picture shows our middle school functional capacities. And you'll see in our middle schools that 4 of the 5 middle schools are beyond capacity today. The most pronounced of which is Memorial Middle School. Memorial Middle School, and many of you have heard me say this many times, Memorial Middle School has over 1,300 students in it. Memorial Middle School is the 6th largest school in the state of South Dakota. Not the 6th largest middle school, it's the 6th largest school. The schools that are larger than Memorial Middle School are Washington, Lincoln, and Roosevelt High Schools here in Sioux Falls, Rapid City Central, and Rapid City Stevens. No other school in the state of South Dakota is larger than Memorial Middle School. Aberdeen Central High School is not, Brandon Valley is not, Watertown High School is not, Harrisburg High School is not. None of those high schools are bigger than Memorial Middle School. So when I talk about those are large middle schools and they're overcrowded, that just gives you a little bit of a context as to what I mean in terms of just how big they are. On the right, and you'll see there that 4 of our 5 middle schools are over capacity. On the right, we do that same exercise with our high schools. The blue horizontal bars show you the enrollment at our 4 high schools. And I always feel compelled to say this. I shouldn't need to say this to this group, but we do have 4 high schools in Sioux Falls. We have Roosevelt, we have Lincoln, we have Washington, and we have New Tech High School. And it's a phenomenal high school. It's a project-based high school. You heard a little bit about what they're doing here earlier today. But it's not a traditional high school. So sometimes in this conversation, it gets lost in the conversation. But we have room to grow there. And if you want a great experience for your child or your grandchild, New Tech High School is something you should consider. So as we go back to the high school functional capacities, you can see Roosevelt, Lincoln, and Washington are all over capacity, the most pronounced of which is Roosevelt High School, the largest high school in the state of South Dakota. Actually, I'm sure one of the larger high schools in the region. I don't have that data to know that, but at over 2,300 students, I got to think they're one of the larger high schools in the region and not just in the state. Okay, so the gathering feedback. I talked about how we did that, and we talked with our students, and we talked with our teaching staff, and then we took that information out and had 3 community engagement sessions, one at each of the traditional high schools in Sioux Falls, and we just invited people in to, number 1, define the problem, and then to begin the process of trying to find a solution to that problem. Those were very well attended. We were incredibly pleased with the turnout we had at those 3 community engagement sessions. And from that big funnel then of information, we said, how do we get to where we can have a group that is big enough to be representative and yet small enough to be actionable in what they can give to the Board of Education in terms of recommendations? We came up with a size of 30 people, and we had in that 30 people a group that we tried to make very representative, both geographically in our community and demographically in our community. We did the best that we could in putting that together so that we had voices at the table that represented our community. We also sought input through a community-wide survey. Hopefully you all had an opportunity to serve that out, to fill that out and send that in. We had a very good response there that helped ultimately inform a decision made by our Board of Education. Our task force was charged with giving the board a series of recommendations based on the information that they had. And what they did in an overly simplistic way, I will tell you, is they said, we want the Board of Education to consider these 4 things. We want the board to consider building a new high school, building a new middle school, building a new elementary school, and then also putting together a list of between $40 and $50 million worth of projects that are centered on safety, centered on security, centered on accessibility, and centered on equity across our district. So let me talk just a little bit about each one of those. First of all, the high school. And the high school is the one that seems to drive a lot of our conversation in our community, and it's incredibly important to this project. But just remember, it's not the only piece of the project. So what did the task force say about the high school? Really what they said is get it built and get it built as soon as you can. We want it up by 2021. And is Jeff Kreider here from Operational Services? He's probably working. He's probably nervous too, because every time he hears me say the recommendation, if we pass the bond issue, is 2021. And that might be overly ambitious. We'll wait and see. But if not by 2021, 2022, if a bond issue passes, we would have a high school up and functional at that point in time. The other thing that the task force recommendation was to the Board of Education is that building be built in the northwest quadrant of our community. You might say, why the northwest quadrant of our community? 2 members of our task force were Mark Cotter and Mike Cooper from the city of Sioux Falls. They were unbelievably important to the dialogue that took place in this task force. talking about our growth so that it wasn't just the school district coming up with the numbers, and also talking about where we will grow into the future. The two primary spots for growth in the school district in the future are in the northwest quadrant of the school district and the southeast quadrant of the school district. So the northwest quadrant is something that we're committed to in terms of building a new high school. The question that almost always comes up after that is, are you going to build it on the land that Sanford has donated? And I try to always start the answer to that question in this way. Number one, is an incredibly generous offer that Sanford has put on the table for us. And maybe just quickly to tell you what that offer is, it's 35 acres of land with an option to purchase 10 more acres of land. We need about 40 acres of land for a high school. Just to give you an idea of what that looks like, Roosevelt and Washington are built on 40 and 44 acres of land. I forget which one is 40 and which one is 44, but it gives you an idea of how much land we're talking about and why we're saying 40 acres. The second thing that I would say is Sanford is not holding the school district hostage by saying you must do this or you must do that. There's really only one must in the gift, and the must is that that if we accept the land, a school must be built on that land. Can't build a bus barn, can't build a new office for the superintendent. You got to build a school. I would tell you that we are vetting not only that land, but other land in the northwest quadrant of the community. And if we choose the Sanford land, it will be not only because it's a generous offer, but also because it's the best place for us to build a high school, all things considered. I had somebody say, are you sure there's land available out in the northwest quadrant of our community to build a high school? My answer to that question is yes, because we are in conversation. And I would back that up by saying not only is it available, the folks who own it are really proud of it. That means there's a big price tag on it. So, yeah. So there is land available. We will continue to vet land and the best opportunity for a new high school if a bond issue does pass in our community. Middle school, have that done by 2021 also, or I'm running out of time, or 2022, and build that in the southeast quadrant of the community. I just got done giving you specifics on how large Memorial Middle School is, so the thought might cross your mind. It did mine when I heard the recommendation, and there really was my reaction when I heard the southwest quadrant or southeast quadrant of the community for a middle school. But here's how I like you to think about that. If you take our school district and think of it as a box, just think of it as a square, and divide that square into thirds, and think of the westernmost third of that square. We have two middle schools in that westernmost third, that western third. We have Memorial Middle School and McGovern Middle School in that western third of that square. In the central third of that square, we have Whittier, we have Patrick Henry, and we have Edison Middle Schools. We have three middle schools in the central third of that square. In the eastern third of that square, we don't have any middle schools. So it makes sense from that perspective that we would distribute our middle schools and then ultimately distribute our population to fill in those middle schools as we go. So I think the thought process of the task force was really well done. In elementary school, have that done by 2024. Not quite as urgent, but it's certainly a need. And get that done as quick as you can after you do the middle school and the high school, and put it where you need it, where enrollment growth dictates. Safety, security, accessibility, equity. I would tell you this is our primary focus is safety and security. And really, when I drill down on that, what do you mean by that? Really perimeter security. How do we make sure that our buildings are as safe as we can possibly make them for the safety of our city, and particularly for the safety of our students and for the adults who work in those buildings. The equity piece is a continuation of what happened in 1997. Jack Keegan, the superintendent at that time, and the Board of Education, and ultimately the community in a vote, said in 1997, we need to provide equity across all of our buildings in our district so that no matter what zip code you live in, your child has a quality school to go to. And what great visionaries they were in 1997, and that's something I want to continue to see. And the $40 to $50 million that you see address safety, security, accessibility, and equity issues across our district. We also want to utilize those resources that we already have. We have a number of buildings in our school district that need to serve us for a good long time. And so we want to make sure that we're able to do that. That's what where the TLC comes in. We've got to provide tender, loving care for those resources we're already in charge of and make sure that we take care of those buildings long term. So at this point in time, you talk about, well, what does it mean to you, the consumer? Because I think that's where we all go, is what does it mean to us? What's the cost to me? And that is $190 million. It's kind of hard to wrap my mind around what does $190 million mean. But what I can figure out is what does it mean to me, the consumer? And that's where I need, number one, just a little stats lesson. I'm going to talk to you about the median priced home in Sioux Falls. Now, I was a math teacher when I got into K-12, and I taught statistics. And one of the things I have to remind people is median is not average. Median is middle. So the middle priced home, the assessed value on that middle priced home in the city of Sioux Falls is $185,000. The cost to that homeowner for that $190 million would be $2 per month or $24 per year. Those of you who took the over in the vote win. My 20 minutes are up, but I'm not going to quit quite yet. So $190 million, $2 per month for the median priced homeowner. If you're wondering what does it mean to you, I'm not the person who has that middle home. So what does it mean to me? You can actually go on our website and you can see what it costs to you. But in round numbers, it's basically $1.08 per $100,000 of assessed valuation. Assessed valuation, not what you think your home is worth, but what it's actually assessed at. Take that times the $1.08. I was at a meeting and somebody said, well, what's that mean for a $500,000 home? It's $5.40 monthly on a $500,000 home. You can figure out what it is on your home. And then as a consumer, you can decide, do I vote yes on this or do I vote no on this? And you'll have the facts to do that. Tax comparison, and I put this up there quickly to talk to you just a little bit about how the district has been stewards of your tax dollar. And I enjoy showing this, but I don't want you to think that I'm taking credit for this, because this is a long-standing stewardship and not simply the 3 years that I've been here. But number one, the first thing I tell you is just from comparison of the 11 school districts that reside in Minnehaha and Lincoln County, from a taxation purpose, we're 11th out of 11 school districts in terms of taxing our consumers for school district funds. The second thing I would tell you, and by the way, if we pass this bond issue and nobody else changes their tax rate, we only move up to 10th. But I suspect this, I don't know this, but I suspect this. Even if we would pass a bond issue, after every district changes their tax rate for the coming year, I'll bet even passing the bond issue, we remain 11th out of 11. So that's one piece of evidence that I would say where I think the school district is very good stewards of your tax dollars. The second piece I would say is in 2002, the school district started following a house in the city for taxation purposes. This house is owned by an employee who still works for the school district, so we still get their tax statements every year. Since 2002, the mill levy, the school portion of your property taxes, remember you have school, you have city, you have county on there in terms of property taxes. The school portion of your property taxes, your mill levy, has actually gone down since 2002. But I don't pay a mill levy, I pay dollars. So what does it mean to me in dollars? On that house, since 2002, the taxes have gone up $122 since 2002. A total increase of 10.6% on that house since 2002. An annual increase of 0.6%. Your property taxes go up as a result of school district taxes 0.6% annually. That's the lowest of everybody who has a piece of your property taxes. That's not an indictment on anybody else, because in my own personal opinion, I think the city and the county are also tremendous stewards of your tax dollar. But in terms of growth, the school district has the lowest increase in your property tax dollars over time. So vote on September 18th. Know that on September 18th, we will vote yes or we will vote no for a bond issue. The facts of the matter are, if 60% of those voting are affirmative, the bond issue passes. If less than 60% of those voting are affirmative, the bond issue fails. So that's where we are. Some people have asked me, what does that mean to this district if the bond issue fails? And I will refrain from any scare tactics. Here's what I will say. If you go into our classrooms on September 17th or September 18th or September 19th, you will not see a difference in how we teach kids. That's our goal, that's our function, that's our mission, is to teach kids and teach them well. Passage or non-passage of the bond issue won't impact how we treat kids and how we attempt to best serve them going forward. There'll be a lot of other things that have to happen, whether the bond issue is passed or failed. But really, I think the primary thing for us to focus on today is we'll do our best to teach kids whether this bond issue passes or whether this bond issue fails. So let me just talk quickly about what else. We have 4 areas in our strategic plan where we focus: student outcomes, school climate, staffing, and community engagement. And we'll continue to address those in a big way. If you wonder what are those student outcomes, we're talking about third grade reading levels. We're talking about attendance. We're talking about graduation rates. Maybe next year I'll speak at more length about those. But those are all very, very important to us. And we haven't lost sight of those being really important to us as a school district moving forward. School climate, what is it like for our kids to come to school? But also, what is it like for our 3,400 adults who are employed by the school? What sort of working environment have we developed for those folks? By the way, at 3,400 employees, we're the 4th largest employer in the city of Sioux Falls, behind Sanford, Avera, and Smithfield. So we're an economic driver as well as a taxer, I guess. Staffing, we want to make sure that our primary focus is to bring in the best staff that we can bring in. We compete for teachers really across the region, certainly within the state of South Dakota, and definitely within the greater Sioux Falls area. We want to hire the best and the brightest. We think we do that, and we've got to make sure that our pay structures keep us in position where we can continue to hire the best and brightest teachers. But also, about half of that adult staff that I talked to is non-teaching, and we compete with all of you for that workforce, whether it's on the service side, whether it's cooks or custodians or folks who are providing service to our kids, or whether it's on the IT side. We're all competing with that workforce, so keep your hands off our employees. But we're in the same boat when it comes to workforce development. We really are. And then community engagement. Community engagement isn't just about preparing for a bond election. It's about making sure that we're meeting the needs of the community. We exist solely to serve this community. That's the only reason any of us have jobs, is to serve this community. And we take that seriously. So we're going to continue to listen in terms of community engagement, not just talk like I am today. We're going to continue to listen. So I want to give a big shout out as I switch gears here to the foundation. First of all, for the correct focus, and Stephanie, you couldn't have led into this any better for me, but I was going to talk about how their focus is on teachers and their focus is on student outcomes. I love it. That's where it should be. That's where it is. They walk the talk, and I'm incredibly proud of where they are. But I'm also incredibly proud of the eye that they have on the future. I was called to a meeting with Deb Koski and Stephanie Gongopoulos and Vernon Brown in November, I think. And I was like, oh man, that's a pretty powerful group. Well, they can't fire me. Okay, so that's good. But I wonder what they want. And what they wanted really was to talk about the vision that they had for providing an executive director for the foundation. And if I was capable, I would have done a backflip, because I think it's amazing what our foundation gets done with a purely volunteer board. And when I came here and Amy was talking to me about what the foundation gets done, I couldn't wait to meet the executive director, and then I found out they didn't have one. So I can't imagine what they'll get done with somebody who can take the vision that they have at their board meetings and work on that vision day to day in between those meetings. I just think in a very short period of time, certainly within 5 years, we're all going to look back and say, my goodness, how far have we come? And not only did they have the vision to do that, they went out and hired somebody who I think will do great things for the foundation. I think Allison was a home run hire. And I think she will be a blessing to our community, certainly to our foundation. And then finally, all that talk that we had was good. And for the entire foundation board, I'm glad you didn't just have the right focus. I'm glad you didn't just have the right vision. I'm incredibly thankful that you had the courage to take that step forward, because you had a lot of reasons not to do that. But you took the bull by the horns, and you had the courage to say, this is important to us. So thank you to the foundation for all that you do, but today specifically, thank you for the vision, the direction, and the courage you have for this foundation moving forward. August 23rd, we're back. We've got kids coming in, and I will tell you that on August 23rd, the vast majority of those 24,000 kids, they don't care one bleep about the bond issue. They care about, are you going to engage me, and why should I be here? So as administrators, as teachers, as school employees, it's our job to get ready for August 23rd. I spoke a couple of years ago to the Ministerial Association, and a phrase that kept coming up in the speech that I gave that day was, adults in the lives of kids matter. I believe that maybe more today than I did then, and I would tell you, as an adult group here, your involvement in the lives of this foundation ultimately is your involvement in the lives of the kids that we serve as a community. I want to thank you for that, and I want to tell you that your involvement matters in their lives. And then I saw this quote. I don't remember if I read it, if I heard it, or I listen to a lot of blogs and I read a lot, so I wish I could give credit to this, because it's not an original thought. But I heard this summer, or read it, and it is, teaching is sacred. And I could probably stop right there, but I believe that's why I do what I do. Teaching is sacred. It can and it does change lives. You saw today, or you heard today from two different entities, the impact that your contributions and your focus is having in our classrooms. You've had an opportunity to see on the perimeter of this room what your contributions have done for the kids in our community. I want to thank you for that, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to serve as your superintendent of schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Maher, and thank you for your leadership. But we as a foundation also need to thank some others. I'd like the board members, the school board members, to stand, because they took that step with us to hire Allison Struck. If they are, and some of them maybe have had to leave. Cynthia's here. I know Ken Alberty was here earlier. Thank you very much. We are in the home stretch. We want to highlight an organization that has made an incredible difference in the foundation, the Daughters of the American Revolution. John Paulson is here to talk about why they invest in the foundation and why other organizations should invest.
Thanks, Vernon. I'll go quick. It's an honor to be here today to talk to you about the Education Foundation and why the DAR Foundation supports it. I think it's important to lift that up to you individually and for the organizations that you represent, so that me telling you why our DAR Foundation is involved might help lead to your involvement, and certainly would encourage all of you to do that for the reasons that we've seen. We're really excited about the part that we've been able to play in the new teachers program and the innovation and education. efforts that we've heard about today and have been presented. I don't know about you, but I'm thinking I'd like to go back to school. That'd be fun, wouldn't it? The phrase, where would we be without teachers, comes to the forefront of the DAR Foundation's choosing to provide grants to the Education Foundation because of the positive difference that teachers make in our lives and in making our community a better place, fostering the accomplishment of its residents. So I'd like to say thank you, teachers. Over the last 30 years since the Mary Chilton DAR Foundation was founded with a bequest from Dorothy Davenport, we've given out nearly 400 grants totaling $2 million, but none of those are more important in any way than those provided to the Sioux Falls Education Public Schools Foundation in order to accomplish the objectives of your programs. Our grant support is in keeping with the purpose of the DAR, which stands for Daughters of the American Revolution, whose members are descendants of patriots in the Revolutionary War. So you always wanted to know that, didn't you? The purpose of the DAR Foundation and the DAR is to promote educational, historical, and patriotic objectives like you teachers emphasize daily. And we know you do that, and that's why we're interested in being involved and supporting you. So let me close with a few words from Dorothy Davenport, citing the reason for making her bequest. I think it illustrates the reason why the DAR Foundation is participating and perhaps lifts up the idea to you individually and, like I said, to your organizations to get involved, to help contribute to the great work of the Sioux Falls Education Foundation. And here's what Dorothy had to say. Because of a firm conviction, there will be aided and advanced in the locality of Sioux Falls the splendid objectives of the Daughters of the American Revolution, that to a substantial degree, such locality will become a better and happier place to live. And you teachers make it so. Thank you.
We are down to the last piece of business. There are envelopes in front of each of you. And as you pick those up, there is one thing all of us have in common in this room. I bet every one of us can think of a teacher that made a difference in our lives. And I want you to hold that person, that teacher, in your mind for a moment while I shared my story of Mrs. Nelson. Mrs. Nelson was the K-12 librarian in Arlington, South Dakota. But she was much more than that. She was the algebra teacher and the prom advisor and the homecoming advisor and the yearbook advisor and the newspaper advisor, small town. She was the quintessential librarian. She loved the Dewey Decimal System, neat stacks, and a quiet library. If there was so much as a peep in her domain, she'd stomp out of her office, hands on the hips of her skirt, because she always wore a skirt. And she'd point her nose and a finger in the direction of the noise, and it was instant silence. Those eyes could melt the biggest athlete in the school. Yet she had the patience and the heart of gold. For those of us who didn't see the value in algebra, there was no private tutor for math in Arlington, South Dakota. She did it for free, hours on end, with any student who needed help. That was her priority. Being the newspaper advisor was not. But in those hours she spent working on algebra with me, she saw in me something that maybe others didn't. She saw that I could write. She saw that I had an interest in news. And she invited me to write for the student newspaper. And although that wasn't her priority, it became her priority to make sure I had the tools I needed. And she did it at great risk to herself, because as she built my confidence, I once wrote an editorial kind of slamming the principal for giving up Parents' Night. And she stood beside me and she said, "Freedom of the press, Vernon, the pen is mighty, use it." This is the librarian and the math teacher. But maybe more importantly, this was the 1980s, farm crisis. I was a farm kid. She found a journalism camp for me. She didn't have money in the budget for that. But she knew there wasn't money in the budget of my family either to send me. But she made sure I got to go to that camp, and in that, she lit a fire in me. And she knew that, and she encouraged it. She believed in me, and that's what this foundation is about. It is about helping those teachers get the resources they need to light fire under the students. You heard great examples of it today. So I want you to pick up your checkbooks, and don't write the number in yet. I want you to go to that memo line, and I want you to write the name of that teacher who did that for you. We all have that teacher. Write that memo line for that teacher. Then write the number in. Angie and Allison, you can be at the back of the room, and as you leave, please leave your envelopes with them. Or you can take them with you, take them to your organization, tell them this story of what the foundation is, and please give. We appreciate the attendance. This is the biggest event we've had, so thank you to you for being here, and remember to vote on September 18th. Thank you.